This is Invisible Inc., the podcast for under-resourced women entrepreneurs. And I'm your host, Shubha Chakravarti, founder of Achieve. Join me as I talk to women entrepreneurs about the nuts and bolts of their journeys and to experts who will give you insights that are hard to find anywhere else. Let's jump in. How do you marry a burning desire to help women advance with the need for economic viability? How do you take something that works very well at the individual level and carefully rebuild it so it works for thousands of people, reliably and effectively? And how do you balance the needs of individuals with those of large companies and make both of them happy? In this episode, Sangeeta, founder and CEO of Gotara, talks about the career-long frustrations that prompted her to found her startup, her patient journey to scaling the solution the right way, her laser focus on data and financial discipline, and much more. Now, here's Sangeeta. Hi, Sangeeta. Welcome to Invisible Inc. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Shubha. Thanks for the invite. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
So, you had a pretty interesting journey across so many different industries, very impressive portfolio, 26 patents, PhD in physical chemistry. I don't even know where to begin. So, you were doing very well in corporate America. So, what triggered this move into entrepreneurship?
I got the bug of trying to lead an organization from my GE days because once they identify a potential talent, they put you in a different job. You're helicoptered into a different job to see how well you do to make you a general manager. So I had done jobs in pretty much every area, function that you can think of, even though as a scientist to begin with. And then I thought, hey, I could run a company. Why not? But my husband was closer to doing his startup, his spin-off. So I said, okay, I'm going to be your financial backstop. You go do this. And now his company is doing well. So I thought it was my turn to do it. So I've been wanting to do this for almost 10, 15 years. And I waited to find the right time. And in some ways, it was the right time because the area that I really wanted to go after, where I wanted it to be a fun thing, that it doesn't feel like work. It feels like hobby and passion. And what I wanted to work on, if I had started that, launched that 10 years ago, it would not stick. It is the right time now.
And is that just because DEI is so prevalent, or is there some other reason why it's the right time?
With the Me Too movement and what happened in Minnesota, Floyd incidents and all that, it really opened the eyes of all the employers. And the employers started to put their money where their mouth was. And they were not doing that. Before it was a lip service, check in the box. Now they're spending the real money. And I said, oh, now I can make a business out of this. I never wanted an NGO. NGOs are very hard to sustain. I wanted to have a business where it makes its own money to do the right thing and where everybody wins.
Love it. I completely understand the huge uptick in spend and attention right after the George Floyd incidents and all of that stuff. But now with the economy cooling off and inflation being what it is, I'm reading in the papers and the press about how it's no longer a priority because guess what? It's a recession. Therefore, DEI doesn't matter. I'm just curious as to what you're observing and what your take is on that sentiment that I've seen quite a bit.
So I could be a contrarian in this whole era of recession. I think it's a fake recession. If you look at all the companies that are laying off people, if you look at their financial statements, they're actually doing pretty good. It is market correction that is happening from the tech industry because they were over capped. It's market correction for technical compensation for tech folks. They were getting overpaid for no reason. So the course correction for that segment of the market has unfortunately impacted the rest of the market. And it's kind of a domino effect. If they say, oh, I'm not going to spend any money, then this business loses some revenue, and then the next business loses some revenue. So that's the fear I still have. However, leaders who truly believe in not this DEI initiative, but how the business is really run, how critical is talent, they're still spending the money. They have not backed off at all. So if you're a real leader and if you want to run a real business that makes money, you would not back off from investing in talent. It's as simple as that.
That's a great segue. So tell me about what Gotara does.
So Gotara is, as I was saying, that I wanted to get into the field where it has been very male dominated. I grew up in aerospace, energy, and technology industry. And I feel very privileged and lucky that I was able to rise to executive ranks. And I felt like, why aren't there more women doing the same thing I'm doing? I'm no smarter than them. They should be here too. And what I saw was, if you mentor and coach and you take some people under your wing, you become their sponsor, you can. But you can't scale that. It's a human one-on-one interaction. It's very, very hard. You're a busy person. I have been wanting to scale that for the longest time, and I've been very frustrated because I couldn't do it. So I wanted to do something where you can scale and help millions of women at the same time. Provide a platform for the people who want to give back and people who want to get the advice or get some help right now, because my career is at a point where I could get totally derailed or I could actually skyrocket to a new space. And I didn't have that in my career. I was lucky that I got a sponsor. I didn't even know what a sponsor meant at the time. But most women do not have real mentors, coaches, or sponsors to help them. And even if they have somebody in the company, they can talk about the company culture, how to succeed in the company and things. But when it comes to sensitive topics, they can't. They can't. And I'll tell you, once or twice, I have shared sensitive stuff where I truly had huge trust in my mentorship system. But the word gets around and you get passed over for a job. Well, she has a small daughter, so she probably doesn't want to travel. Well, let me make that decision. Don't make the decision for me. But those are the things that happen. And this is where a third party like Gotara could really help. I wish Gotara was there when I was growing up. I was in some really bad situations where I was ready to give up my job. Or I thought I might get fired because I had challenged this big leader with aura around them. But I knew I was right, but nobody was supporting me. Until the data had proven me right, which took 2 months. I didn't know whether I'd get fired or I'd just simply leave. And no one should go through something like that. No one. And as a leader, even though I care about having diversity of thought, I never have intentionally said, oh, put a page on diversity and I want to have a diversity review. It is just integrated in the whole business we do. If people are presenting, why aren't junior people presenting? Why is it just senior people? Or why are there only men? Why are there no women? Or why are there people only from US? Why not from China or India or Europe who are also part of our team? So driving that kind of diversity naturally makes the team much better. And when you lose that diversity, you lose as an organization. And many times, I couldn't keep tabs with everything. Once you become a senior leader, you don't know what's going on at every level. And you have an organization like Gotara that can come in and help just in time, bite-sized stuff. You will retain that talent. You will keep the talent motivated, and they will help. The way our system works, it's an AI/ML driven platform, but at the same time, you have the support of leaders who have lived in your shoes. And they're giving you their best experiences to help you succeed.
It's very clear that it's a scalable platform and I can get a real-time, just-in-time kind of assistance or support if I'm a woman in STEM. So let's say I'm an employee at Amazon or some tech company of your choice. I'm having a problem and I don't know how to get my next promotion. I've been told repeatedly, whatever, pick your favorite poison. How does Gotara help in this situation?
It could happen 2 ways. An employee can go to their employer. It could be your tech AB organization and say that, hey, I want to go through the Gotara program. So they may choose to send you or a cohort of women along with you. Or in many cases, the employer we are talking to will decide that they're going to select this 10, 20, 100 women to go through the program, what we call career sprints. They are 8-week career sprints. And the only thing that they need to do is identify these women. And then we take on from there. So we minimize the load on the employers. and managers. So we have templates of a leader inviting the manager, inviting the participants. So we want engagement to make sure that people are watching the progress and helping them progress. And then we go through onboarding, and they come with a 3 to 6 month goal. And we help identify what are the couple of skills they need. And sometimes the skills they think they need versus the skills they actually need may be different. And within 8 weeks, they are actually making a business impact or an impact on themselves. My expectation is the majority of the women who go through the career sprint are going to get promoted, or will get a bigger scope job, or will get higher visible opportunities within the next 6 months to a year.
Got it. So the career sprint is really the flagship offering of the business. So you had a core focus on improving diversity and advancement for women in STEM as your core idea. Did you have multiple ideas? And if so, how did you evaluate them? How did you put them through a filter? How did you land on this specific design?
So I wouldn't say that I was evaluating multiple ideas for the startup. I said, this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I want to change. But how do I do it? What is the unique thing that I can bring that not everybody and his mother is doing? Whether it is e-learning or coaching or mentoring, what is missing today? Why am I not a scalable advisor? Why people are sitting in Dubuque, Iowa with no connection to the tech industry, not getting the advice they need? Why that woman sitting there, highly qualified, cannot get the best jobs like the woman sitting in Seattle or Silicon Valley? Similarly, Nairobi, Kenya, or a small city in Gujarat, India. They will all say democratizes access to how you can succeed. And that is what I think drives me the most.
So you now know that you want to democratize access. You also have a pretty good idea of what the building blocks are, right? So there's some coaching involved, there's mentoring involved, there's some objectives. So you have all the building blocks. Walk me through how all of them come together to form this concept.
So this is where technology comes into play. So every interaction happens through the platform. So it's working 24/7. We guarantee pretty much most of our members that they'll get an advice within 24 hours after they ask. We believe what they're asking is urgent, is important. So when they say something is not working, or my manager threw me under the bus last week and I need to course correct, otherwise people will think I was not the creative one and I didn't do that. It's somebody else who did it. And soon enough, I'm not getting the promotion. I'm not getting the raise that I need to get. And it is so important to course correct as soon as possible. I've learned that throughout my career, that you let it simmer, it never gets finished. You also shouldn't respond immediately sometimes on the sensitive situation. So you take a breather for 24 hours and then you respond. And in that time, we get you help. So you are actually making an informed decision on how to do it professionally, where it doesn't hurt your career, but it accelerates your career.
It sounds like all of these complex pieces took some time to put together. Can you walk me through kind of your roadmap of how you started from the idea, how you built each piece, how you tested it, and how you came to the place where you said, okay, this is ready for the road at a high level?
So one thing that I would say is when you do a startup, what I originally thought versus what I built is very different. Fundamentally, it's the same. The mission is the same. The audience is the same, but exactly what we are offering is different. At first, when I wrote my whole business plan, I wrote this in a very Amazon fashion, PR, FAQ, press release, frequently asked questions. I said women have 3 stages of their career. They're in high school, then they go to college, then they're at work. So I'm going to take care of all 3. As I started to think about it, I said, oh my God, this is like boiling the ocean. There are competitors in each one of these fields. I personally have the most experience in this country in professional working. And that is where the biggest loss is also, because you are putting so many women through the training and education and all that, and half of them drop out of the workforce. It's a GDP loss for society, individual financial loss, and loss for the family and the employer. $9 billion a year US employers lose when a woman walks out the door from STEM plus jobs. And they're the most lucrative jobs. So we went from like 3 different phases to 1 phase. Maybe we will expand, but that is where we are focused. And in the beginning, we said we are going to have a B2C business. And we did all our research. We did the interviews and stuff. And we said, hey, this is how we're going to sustain. A little bit of fee for a yearly stuff will go the long way. What we didn't realize is we were trying to really teach a new behavior to these women where they had to come and share something sensitive about their career. And how are they going to trust? What is it that they're going to get? That was non-existent in the marketplace. Now maybe people will say, oh yeah, go to Gotara, you give some great advice. So once it becomes a brand, you would probably monetize it to a certain extent. But in the beginning, people had no clue. And so we had to immediately change that, drop any kind of fee, make it free for everybody. And I'm glad we did that because it is the right thing to do. Then we had to figure out how to make money.
I was hoping you'd come to that.
And those employers who we were talking to were very keen on what we were doing. They wanted to get some help because they were all struggling. They all are struggling. Whether some people accept that or not, pretty much all employers in this specific space are struggling. So that is how we came up with these career sprints. So we experimented that manually, and then we coded it, and then essentially it's a continuous learning process, and it's iteration of what customers want, what users want. And so we're constantly getting that feedback to understand what we need to improve on our stuff, what we need to add, So there are lots of other things that we can do, but we are very focused on 1 or 2 things that we want to do really well. And we want to be known in the marketplace for those 2 things. Once you have that, it gives you an entree into the field. Otherwise, there are huge players in the field in general about mentoring, coaching, e-learning, you name it. Even though ours is different, people are not going to see the difference until some people experience it.
So where would you describe Gotara is in the startup process? Would you say you're pretty much ready to go? You're in the market, you're still testing market? Like, how would you characterize your position
So
today?
I want to have Gotara be constantly testing in the market. I want our product to constantly evolve, even 10 years later and 20 years later. So I don't want it to be a constant. But at this point, I think we have proven our product market fit and we're getting revenue. We have always had paid customers. We didn't really do any free stuff for our customers or users. And some of our customers are in their 3rd year with us. So that proves that we have product market fit. Yes, we can tweak the product. Yes, we can make it better. So we are on that journey, not at the beginning of the idea, but actually a proven idea. And we have an enterprise platform, so we can scale to millions of people if you wanted to in the next month.
So you decided that you're going to take the jump and you're going to make this happen. And then today you're at the point where you've crossed the product market fit. How long did that whole journey take you?
From the time of the launch or from the time when we started Gotara, where we started working on stuff?
I would say the latter, because what matters to an entrepreneur is the moment you decide that I'm going to do this. So that's when you start making sacrifices, right? You've got to make choices and say.
I would say it's probably about 15 months, 16 months.
That's pretty impressive. And then from the moment you launched it to product market fit, how long was that window?
So we launched the product, I would say, in April, May timeframe of 2021. And by that time in 2022, we were pretty solid there to start working.
Okay, that is pretty impressive. And in terms of the business model, right? I liked how you put together the whole piece around, you did the manual experimentation, kind of like the work it out by hand method and engineering, and then make sure it worked, right? So how about the other pieces of business model, right? You had to come up with the right revenue model. You had to come up with a good pricing strategy. Obviously, you're in a B2B. We'll talk about customer acquisition in a minute, but can you talk through how you figured out the revenue model, how you tested it, and what were your big learnings about that process?
So before I go there, I want to say one thing, that when investors are looking at SaaS companies, They pretty much want everything to be automated. But if you look at the best AI ML that is done in a shorter period of time, you literally have human beings teaching the machine. That is how they learn the best. If you start with a tech platform that you got mumbo jumbo going on for a long time. So even Google today, when you do a search, 15% of the time, it returns nothing pretty much to you. It'll give you crap that you don't need. We have a backstop for that. It's called human intelligence. 100% of the time, we give you something that is useful to you. And that helps the machine learn faster. So I believe what customers are getting from us is a better solution than maybe what the investing world demands us of. Instead of creating a tech platform and then stumbling through to figure out what is the right solution, doing machine learning and stuff, I'm saying experiment it manually. You will make the machine learn a hell of a lot faster.
You brought up an excellent point, and that prompts me. Is there anything else that's unique about either your approach or the industry that you had to integrate into your work or your model other than what you just talked about, which is the making sure that you have a human backstop because you don't want any garbage to go out to the user at any point?
Yeah. And the thing is, my number one goal is to make the customers and the users happy, satisfied, elated by the experience that they go through. And the way you get there is to understand what they need. And if 20% of the time they're getting crap from us, they're not going to come back. So to me, that was the most important thing. My belief is that when you have customers, you have traction, investment will eventually come. Or you can run a profitable business. Not every business in the world is funded by investment venture capital. So there are different approaches. Now I'm going to go back to the question that you had for pricing and revenue models. So we have subscription models where people buy career sprint units from us. And Inside Reports is another one that they buy. For pricing, we did a lot of research to figure out what is it that employers spend on upskilling or training individuals. And that research led us to the pricing that we did create. And so is our pricing too low or is our pricing too high? That is what I wanted to understand. And the way we value sell it, it is very clear to employers that the pricing point is not too high. So it is not a hurdle. But is the pricing too low? I don't believe that. However, I've had a couple of senior leaders who've been in the industry for a long time that said, oh my God, you're selling this great service so cheap. You should increase the price. So I said, once we have enough traction, we will. But not right now. I need to have more traction. So I'd rather stay at the price I am.
Talking about the clients who you've had and you've brought on board, the other big piece is also the customer acquisition, right? B2B is a very different animal than the initial B2C model that you're talking about. So what was your approach going in? What were your big learnings about customer acquisition from a B2B model perspective?
When you're a startup, you have really no track record, and every customer looks for that track record. So it's hard in general. And I think it's more based on the credibility of the founder or the leaders, co-founders and the leaders of the organization than it is about the product you're trying to sell, even though it is a unique product. And so most of the beginning sale come from your network, people who know you, and they'll say, oh, she's doing this. It must be good. Let us try it. And so it started with that, and then it has begun to expand beyond that.
And one last question on the revenue, and then we'll move on to the other side of it, which is you talked about a couple of different things that a client can buy. So obviously they can buy the sprint units, they can buy data. So I like how you were thinking about you have this core operation and it has all these byproducts that can each be either collectively or separately monetized. How did you think about that at the outset? Has that changed? And what learnings would you say you would pass on to others in terms of thinking about what you're actually selling and who's willing to pay for what?
I think keeping your business model really simple in the beginning is very important. So when we started out, I was saying, oh, we could do this, we could do that, we could do that. I mean, we could create like 6 different revenue streams. And then you'd get so distracted because each revenue stream requires attention. of building the product, figuring out how to sell it, understanding the product market fit, evolving it, pricing it, and then growing it. And so as a result, we intentionally cut out a bunch of stuff that we said we're going to put it in phase 2 or phase 3. Phase 1 will be the core of why we wanted to be in this business. So there are lots of things that we can do and generate business. But right now, I would say that this could expand at least 5 times in types of products that we are offering today. So my recommendation would be whatever core idea you have, stick with that. Keep the products really simple. No more than a product or 2 products before you expand.
That's great advice. I have one follow-up on that, which is even within your mission, you have 2 or 3 different choices in terms of what specific product category you might offer. They're both kind of aligned to your mission, but one is closer to your mission, but might have a more limited revenue monetization opportunity, while the other might be a little farther away, but give you more money. Did you ever have to face trade-offs like that? And if so, how did you make those trade-offs?
That is a very interesting question. Something will have a long-term payoff and something will have a short-term payoff. And you always have to do the dance. You have to do both. You cannot prioritize one over another. So right from the outset, we said that we are here for the good of society. Even though we're not making money, we have to do something to start making an impact. And so we have kept the B2C site free, that no one pays anything for. And we are maintaining it. Cost us money to do it. But we don't charge anything to the users. And we'll continue to do that. But it has to be somehow supported by something else. Otherwise, we can't do that. And so we had to very quickly figure out a short-term way of generating revenue and see if that becomes a long-term revenue generation, or you have to move on to another product or another product. And so far, what we have found with our B2B, it was close enough to our B2C that it has worked really well. And I believe it's going to continue to be our long-term strategy.
I love it. It's almost like they're both feeding each other too, because what you're gaining and what you're learning on the B2B side is obviously going to feed what you do and hopefully help you deliver a better product, even on the B2C side, even though you're not charging anything.
And when you're cash strapped, this is the question I ask my team. Is it going to generate the revenue? Is it going to impact the paying customer? Is it going to impact the user who's not paying? So it's on priority. And if we can give something for free to the non-paying user, I'm all for it. But it has to impact the paying user first.
Love it. So then when you were testing all these, you said you could come up with like 5 different product ideas, right? And I'm sure each had a different sort of revenue margin profile. Did you say, hey, I'm going to pick something as long as it meets a minimum requirement? Or were you trying to maximize revenue? Like, how did you solve for the right product in terms of its revenue generating capacity?
So your users and your customers will tell you that. And so as you're doing your research, you're talking to them, you're getting their feedback as you're building stuff, they're going to tell you what's a must-have, what is nice to have. So you understand that and you see how many of the customers or the users say must-have. So if one person says must-have, but the rest of the users don't even mention it, why are you building that feature? Maybe for one customer, they're not going to pay for it. And in fact, we have made a mistake of one of our large customers asking for one of the features. And we built it immediately. So, oh my God, let's build it. And they didn't use it. Nobody else used it. And it has some use. But we're going to morph that product into something that will have a better use. We've learned from it. But we have also learned from not listening to just one customer.
Great. I love it. It's how the combination of data and experimentation is at the heart pretty much of everything you're doing. And we talked about revenue and you talked about how there's a need to make money, all of which are points very well taken. So this brings into the question, funding. How did you think about funding in the beginning? What was your expectation going in terms of how you were going to fund it? And what did you learn about funding along this journey?
So I had a very different path than most standard startups. Most standard startups will go through accelerators. If they don't go through accelerators, something akin to accelerators. I mean, you could get 25K, 125K, and you give up 25% of your company for that. So when I started, having had almost a full career in corporate America, I said, I'm going to use my savings. People buy mansions and people buy jewelry, people buy all this stuff. I'm going to spend my savings for this, and I'd be happy doing it. And that's where I started. So I spent a lot of my savings on Gotara so that I could stay true to my mission of what I really wanted to do. What I didn't want to do was kind of go off on a tangent because somebody says this is how you can make more money. I wanted to make money, but not at the expense of my mission. And so that led me to do what I did, where pretty much most of the investment in the company was mine. And I had some friend and family investment. But in hindsight, what I feel is going through Accelerator really creates a community for you. It helps you create a network of customers and investors. So it's actually, in hindsight, even if I didn't need the money, how could have I found an accelerator that could help me with that? And by the way, it just fell on my lap like last week or the week before last or something like that, where I am now part of an accelerator. Do I need the cash from them? I don't. And luckily it works out with them because they are a nonprofit organization. There is some donation stuff involved, but it is not a typical accelerator, which works out great for us. And it works out great for them. And the name of the organization is flyWheelCincinnati.org.
And one other question on the business building, and then we'll move on to sort of your personal experiences and learnings through this process. On the business building, team is obviously a big part of it. You mentioned that, especially in the early stages in B2B, bet on the jockey, not on the horse, right? How did you approach building your team? What were your learnings in terms of when do you need to hire? Who do you need to hire? And what arrangement do you need to have to hire the right folks?
So when I started, and this was right before the pandemic when I quit Amazon, so I'm thinking I need to have a brick and mortar office somewhere. Where should I have the office? So I have a home in Cincinnati and I have a condo in Seattle. And I was thinking I'm going to test out both places. Let's see which one works out. And then pandemic happened and everybody started working virtually. And as I was building my team, I realized that in many cases, I couldn't find all the talent I needed in either Cincinnati or Seattle. It was in a different location, but they were the right talent. The thing is, finding the right talent for the job that we have in our company, it's unique. Our company is very mission driven. And if you're not passionate about that vision, I'm not interested in having you as a part of my organization. You got to have that passion. It cannot be just a job. And so as a result, all the talented people we found were all over the place, everywhere. I mean, I don't have that large a team, but they're all in different states. And they're in Canada, they're in India, they are on West Coast, they're East Coast, they're South, they're Midwest. And so we have people all over the place. So I actually opened up my own thinking that you don't need to be in one location. And this was a huge change for me. I had always worked in a company where I went to the office. And I was thinking, how am I going to work from home? This must feel very lonely. Then the whole world joined me, so it didn't make any difference. But I can tell you, we do a daily stand-up every day for 30 minutes. I'm very close to my team. I don't think I've been this close to any team that I work with, even though my last job, I was on the same floor with the whole team. So I think opening up to virtual workforce was very important and can be very important to startups. And even though startup mentality is everybody's working in the garage, no, you don't need to be in the garage in the same place. You can be in different places. And the second thing is identifying the talent who has worked with you in the past, who you could trust, is very, very critical to have. And I had a few of those. I mean, who wanted to work with me. I wanted them to work with me. So you didn't have to think twice about whether it was going to get done or not done. You didn't have to work on developing the trust. And then we actually found some really junior talent graduating out of college or junior in general who had the passion and they're ready to make the impact. And we're training them and they are the best people. We would want them to be with us forever. And so talent is something that I'm really passionate about. And my hope is that anyone who works in Gotara learns a ton and they grow and become much bigger leader than they ever thought they could be.
Fantastic. So you talked about this need for support and how you wish you could have been part of an accelerator earlier on. What kind of support did you actually need and where did you find it, given that you didn't participate in all of these accelerators? They say it's a very lonely road to be an entrepreneur.
It is very lonely road, I can tell you that. It sometimes feels really lonely. You go in these draws every now and then when you're running a startup. But the good news for our platform was anytime I felt that, I would go to my daily dashboard of metrics. And one of the things that we watch constantly is the feedback from our users and participants. And when you see how our advice or something we work with them on impacted their career and their lives, it just absolutely makes it worthwhile every time. Every time. That is what is the highlight of our day. Of all the things that we look at, how many members we have, what kind of revenue we have. The first thing we look at, what's the feedback? Did we get any more feedback? And what did they say? And it has been really awesome feedback. And so that keeps us going from that perspective.
And for you personally as a leader, I mean, there are some things you can't delegate or frankly even discuss with your team because you're the torchbearer and you have to carry that load alone. So what kind of support or even a sounding board have you needed? And if so, how have you found that support as the CEO and as the founder?
Yeah, I'm a pretty transparent person. So I actually share more than probably most CEOs share with their teams. But I give them the confidence that, yeah, shit happens and you move on. World is a real place. You're not always going to have everything positive. And I'm going to share that with you because you'll see me upset about something. You know why. And so there is nothing behind the curtains here, you know? And then also when things happen, especially if it's bad news, I don't immediately share. I kind of think about it and put it in perspective. I don't want to have a knee-jerk reaction or changing directions of the company because one customer said this or one investor said this. I may actually mull over that for a while before I would say, was this an input that we really need to change something about as a result of it? And obviously, if it is related to something wrong or unethical or something related to compliance, we're going to do it immediately. But a change in product or a change in pricing or change in direction of how we're approaching sales or marketing or product or this, that, and the other, I'm not going to do a knee-jerk decision. So those are some of the things that I would hold off and not share until I have formulated some approach of how I'm thinking. And then open it up and ask for their input. And many times they come up with ideas. So being transparent actually helps.
It was very interesting to hear you touch on so many different aspects of your business. Some of them are technical, some of them marketing, sales related, some of them financial. Now, clearly you come from a very unique background in that you've run P&Ls before, you've run large organizations. So you kind of come to the game almost fully equipped. That said, were there skills that you still felt that you had to pick up on? What were those and how did you pick up on those?
I say that I was very lucky to have gone through the experiences I've gone through. My first job was actually Mattel for a few years, where they taught us how to sell research and development, which is not an easy thing to do. And this Italian guy would talk with his hands and say, people buy benefits. And that just stuck in my head forever. So anytime that I'm selling, I'm not selling from my perspective because I think it's a cool product or it does what I think it does. What's in it for them? So that was a very important, whether you're doing R&D or whether you're selling, it's very, very important. Or you're changing the organization or you're going through change management. What's in it for the people to change? You need to really understand that. So I learned that. Then in GE, I really learned how to develop talent. I really learned how to have robust processes. It just drilled into you. So you don't even think about it and you're doing it. And in Nielsen, I truly learned how to run a global organization where I'm not there physically with them. And it came in so handy during the pandemic and as I was starting out, that without being physically present next to them, I can motivate them, I can get them to do stuff, and everybody feels like they're part of the team. And then at Amazon taught me startup, how to innovate fast and how to implement things fast. So I got a lot of training from that perspective to run the business. So I feel really confident that what we are innovating and how we are running the stuff is I feel very comfortable and confident about. The area that I did not have any experience in was the investment community. I had no clue what drives them. I had no clue what they think, how they operate. And I wish I had done a little bit of research before I actually launched my startup. That would have helped me tremendously. And I learned, and I now know how to approach them, how to work with them. And I wish I had done that before the time came for me to start thinking about raising money. So that was one thing. And there are things I'm learning on marketing and sales. I was really never a salesperson in my career before. I mean, yeah, I was a leader, but I didn't really go hunt and close myself. And what I realize is, even though I've not done it, and I was a little bit leery of doing that, I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it. So,
one point on the investment community, right? Why did you decide that you didn't need to look up on it? Was it just the fact that you were pretty sure you're going to find other ways of funding it? And if you had to learn, what would you have done differently to get more up to date or more knowledgeable about the whole investment side of startup?
Yeah, so just like I drew a business plan, so I relied on maybe 2 or 3 people who were from investment community, and they were really senior people. And what they told me, oh, once you have this in 6 months, you'll be ready to go and start raising money. And I kind of took their word for it, and I should have not. I should have actually done my own research and should have reached out to people who do this kind of stuff. And to begin with, I didn't even know the names of the companies that did this. The Techstars, the YC Combinator, and a bunch of other accelerators and startup communities that I know now. I wish I had known before to just get going, to kind of find out what they're about before really starting anything. And so that is what I would do differently.
And throughout this journey, were there really dark moments where you really kind of break to a halt and said, oops, hit the brakes. If things are looking really bad right now, can I go back to the drawing board? Am I really sure I'm doing this? Have there been any moments like that? And if so, what has gotten you through them?
So, and the fear of coming across a little cocky, I will share this. I was talking to one of the investors and I asked them, do you really want to hear this? Because you already have investment in this area. And I mean, would you still be interested? Because this could be an overlapping investment. No, interested and all that. And then they go through the whole thing. And then in the end, I said, what do you think? I think you're right. It is an overlap of investment and blah, blah, blah. So essentially giving you a no. And so I said, that's okay. I'll see you on the other side. Not a problem. And so those are your low moments. However, I had enough confidence in what we were doing that we're going to succeed. We're going to do well. I have actually not once thought that we could fail.
Give me like the secret. Like, what is the secret to having that self-confidence?
That is because I know we can adapt to change. I know we can be flexible. I'm not hard-nosed about doing just one thing that I think is right, because I'm listening to the market. So when you are listening to the customers and you're listening to the users and you're willing to flex and you're willing to adapt to the market, there is no reason why you won't succeed.
So you place your faith in the problem and you place your faith in your ability to listen to objective data and to respond appropriately to it.
Absolutely. On 180 degrees on a few things that I was hell-bent on, like, this is the way we're going. And the data was presented. And I said, If you present the data and it has the right logic, I will do 180 degrees. And I have.
So the process will come out right every time. So as long as you have faith in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is true. So it's not that you will not hit failures. Even after doing all of that, you may still see something didn't work out. But if you're adaptable and if you're flexible, that loss is not a huge loss because you catch it as soon as it happens. And you say, okay, we got to go do something about it instead of sitting and crying about it.
Makes sense. Obviously, we share, I think, an ethnic heritage. You're a woman in a male-dominated world. How has your being a woman or being South Asian impacted your journey in your view, and how have you tackled that?
I think from customer perspective, I feel pretty damn good about it. Sometimes you can have an advantage because you're stereotyped. Sometimes you're disadvantaged because you're stereotyped. So a lot of people think, oh, you're Asian, you're Indian American, you must be really smart. Thank you, please.
I'll take it.
Take that. But it is hard sometimes for customers who have not experienced what women experience in the workplace. Sometimes it's hard for them to comprehend because they feel like they have done everything right. And how could this be? Women should just go to HR and complain about it. And if we did, we would not be where we are today. And women get it, but sometimes men don't. And a lot of leaders get it. A lot of men leaders get it. And most of my customers are men leaders. And so they obviously get it. But you will also get that either they have not gone through that experience where there are women working for them. And sometimes you don't even know why women have left your organization. You're thinking that they left because they want to take care of their kids. That wasn't the case. They got pushed out by your 95% chances are that they got pushed out of your organization. In many cases, I might not, being a woman, I might not have known that another woman lower in my organization got pushed out of the organization for the wrong reasons. And I wouldn't know that because it doesn't bubble up.
So it's just this challenge of getting across a felt and lived experience that is not necessarily shared by someone else who doesn't share those similar types of backgrounds and so forth.
Well, I don't know if it is about being a woman, but not being a serial entrepreneur. So even though I have 25 plus years of corporate experience that I believe is very useful for running a company, and that's why we were profitable last year in our second year of launch, which was not an easy feat. Most of the startups don't do that. But if I was a second time or a third time entrepreneur, I'd have lots of advantages.
That's good stuff. Looking back, if you had to do everything over again in terms of your startup, is there anything you do differently? And if so, what and why?
As I said earlier, I think I would probably try to go through some sort of an accelerator or understand the investor community a little bit better. Those are the two things that I would do differently. And maybe the product market fit testing I would do differently because I'll have a different kind of input from the investor community. I don't know. That is the thing that I cannot predict looking back. Like if I had done that, would it be different? It may be the same. I don't know.
Fair enough. So is there any, I don't want to say advice, but what tips or food for thought would you offer to an entrepreneur who's maybe further behind the path than you are and now thinking of going out on her own into a STEM-related field, coming from a corporate background, similar to yours, no first-time founder experience, needs investment? Is there anything you would say that you've learned and would help her?
Yeah, a couple of things that I would do differently, and the advice that I would give to people is write a document of what your idea is and who your audience is and how do you plan to execute it. When you write it down, it becomes real. Oh, I missed this. Oh, I missed that. I didn't think about this. It helps clarify a lot of thought in your head. Think about who could join you in this journey and specific people that you reach out to. And then think about the financials, how you're going to fund this. Do you have your own money? Do you need money? Do you need to raise money? And if you need to raise money, what are the different phases you're going to have? Are you going to spend 100K or 50K first and then see how things go? And then, so I think 3 aspects: writing a document, understanding who is going to be part of your team, and third, understanding the financial model of how you're going to start.
Fantastic. You mentioned the PRFAQ format that I've read about quite a bit on Amazon's journey or process. Is there something that you could share or that's publicly available that others could share to follow that same rigor?
Oh, yeah. So if you type in PRFAQ, you'll find a few examples. And it's like a one-page document as if a journalist is writing about your company. What would they write about 5 years later after you have launched, or 3 years later after you've launched? And then there are questions, which is essentially a business plan, like, what is your mission? Who's your customer? How are you going to do this? All the nitty-gritty that come with running a business. That's the thing. As a CEO, you are the strategist and you are the janitor of the organization. So you got to love doing everything. Even if you don't like it, you are it. If there is a gap, you are closing that gap.
Fantastic.
So be ready for it.
Okay, I'll make one plug and then I'll thank you for a great time. The one plug is don't just do this for STEM, do it for finance, because finance is the forgotten stepchild. And I can tell you from personal experience that women have it just as hard or harder in finance than they do in tech.
So let me tell you this. We talk about STEM plus includes finance, economics, data science, and marketing science. Any field that has data. And I have actually worked very closely with the finance people, and I can barely think of any organization where we had a woman CFO. So I truly believe it's a huge gap. So come join Gotara as an individual for free and bring your employer to get you funded so you can go through the program.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. And thank you, Sangeeta. This has been supremely enjoyable, informative, and very enlightening. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share very candidly your journey. And it's just going to be a lot of fun for a lot of folks, as it has been for me. So thank you.
No, thank you, Shubha. And thank you for starting your journey. Hopefully you'll create something that will be equally beneficial for not just the women, but many more folks.
My conversation with Sangeeta was inspiring on many levels, for her energy, her discipline, her focus, and much more. There were a lot of takeaways, but here are 3 that really stood out for me. First and foremost, Sangeeta is an excellent example of how to take a soft topic like DEI and infuse it with discipline, data, and real impact. The more we can integrate hard data discipline into traditionally softer problems, the better off everyone will be, especially us as founders. Second, I loved her methodical and disciplined approach to building product, creating a short press release, a set of FAQs, and then hand building and testing the solution every step before bringing technology into the picture really increases your odds of success. Her story was a great case study on how to do this right. Last but not least, what I loved about her approach is that despite being immersed in the tech world, she had enough faith in her data and her concept to know when to follow the industry wisdom and when to go a different way. This isn't easy to do, especially if you're a stereotype-busting founder in a male-dominated industry. You'll have plenty of naysayers anyway. But anchoring to a combination of data, first-hand market knowledge, and systematic experimentation will give you the foundation you need to chart your course. So, what one data-driven practice can you bring to your startup that can really up your game? And what one step will you take on it tomorrow morning? Thanks for listening to today's episode. We have show notes and more at achieve.co. That's achieve.co/podcast. Like what you heard? Hit subscribe and share with a friend. See you on the next episode. Now, go be an achiever.